Egypt's former army chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi promises economic growth and political stability following his inauguration as the country's president. At least 30 people have been killed and dozens more wounded in the latest round of militant attacks across Iraq. And residents in the occupied West Bank staged rallies in solidarity with hunger-striking Palestinians encaged in Israeli prisons. Hello there, you're watching Ali Chicha World News and I'm Fatima Basim. Egypt's former army chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has been sworn in as the country's new president in the wake of a political and economic crisis. Sisi took the oath of office at Egypt's High Constitutional Court, having overwhelmingly won May's presidential elections with more than 96% of the vote. Delegations from several states attended the inauguration ceremony in Cairo, where Adli Mansour, who served as interim president, handed power to his successor. In his address to the nation, the newly sworn-in president promised economic growth and political stability.
The social pact between the government, which is represented by its president and its institutions, and the people cannot be strained from one side, but it requires a commitment from both sides. For if I did not heed your demands of running for president, then you would be witnessing a different reality. We'll rely on transparency and truth. We agreed to be clear and in continuous contact, God willing. As we are to share efforts, we will build together political stability, security, economic growth, social justice, and guaranteed rights and freedoms for all.
Egypt's former army chief may have shed his military uniform, but he still looked like the man who ordered the crackdown against the Muslim Brotherhood in his suit and tie when he gave his word to fully commit to his post as the country's second president in 2 years. Sisi took the oath of office at Egypt's High Constitutional Court, having overwhelmingly won the May presidential elections with more than 96% of the vote.
Egypt is going through a critical point in its history by inaugurating the new Egyptian president. Al-Sisi is no longer the presidential candidate, he's the rightful Egyptian president.
Delegations from several states attended the inauguration ceremony in Cairo, where Sisi pledged to safeguard Egypt and protect the rights of its citizens. Interim leader Adli Mansour handed over power to Sisi with the two signing a transfer of power agreement at the Ittihadiyya Palace. Sisi was at the heart of celebrations in Tahrir Square as his supporters rejoiced at hearing the news of his inauguration.
The attendance of these African, European and Arab delegations is an indication of the international approval of the Egyptians' free will of electing a new president.
It hasn't been a year since Sisi toppled former Islamist President Mohamed Morsi, and already he's managed to crown himself as president, of course with the backing of a crushing election result that was put under the spotlight due to a low turnout. The third president to come to power in 3 years faces a wide range of challenges, the most crucial of which are restoring security, stabilizing the political arena, and rebuilding the shattered economy.
Arab countries have stood next to Egypt, and we shall appreciate this. Sisi has an overwhelming popularity, and I think unemployment is the major pressing issue he'll have to face.
The most important issue is the lack of security. Security would bring back investment and therefore stability.
Security was heightened in the capital, with fears rising over anti-Sisi protests driven by loyalty to the trodden Muslim Brotherhood movement and possible militant attacks in response to the former military strongman's coming to power. After 3 years of the political turmoil in Egypt, a new president has sworn in before Egyptians, and while several high-level delegations from across the world have pledged their support, the new president of Egypt shall face some major issues, including security and the ailing economy. Reporting for Litigate TV from Cairo, Karim Azzuddin.
Meanwhile, international reactions to Sisi's inauguration have been pouring in. The chairman of the Iranian National Security Committee and Foreign Policy, Alauddin Burujurdi, announced Tehran's readiness to work with the new Egyptian leadership, adding that Tehran believes in cooperation with Egypt due to its importance in both the Arab and Muslim world. For his part, Russian President Vladimir Putin has sent an invitation to the newly sworn-in president to visit Moscow. Omar Ismail is a political analyst and he joins me now for more on Sisi's inauguration. Mr. Ismail, the fact that the turnout was only 47% reveals that not all Egyptians approve of Sisi. How will this play out during his tenure?
I don't think the 44% is really an issue here for anybody in terms of the election. We've just seen elections in Europe. Elected in the European Union Parliament were less than 37% and 55%. So the fact that 44% of Egyptians have just turned out to vote, it's not really, would not distract the process of electing a new president. I think the challenges is what Mr. Sisi now will set out to remedy the situation, the economic difficulties that the country is going through. These are the challenges. The process now has been two-thirds of the way has been completed, and I think there is a lot of hard work, not only for the Sisi to build his credentials, but also for all the Egyptians.
Well, we seem to be experiencing some technical difficulties with political analyst Omar Ismail. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. Well, after an Egyptian court handed down death sentences to 10 members of the Muslim Brotherhood, many Egyptians voiced their support for the verdict. The Cairo court, which tried the defendants in absentia, found them guilty of inciting violence during protests following the ouster of former Islamist President Mohamed Morsi.
The verdicts reveal the truth. I have no doubts in the judicial authority. I am a lawyer and know this from experience. We respect all the verdicts coming from the judges.
They have damaged the country, they harmed us. The judge has more insight than any one of us. If he sees they deserve death, so be it.
I think the verdict is fair. We've seen a terrible year. We have no doubts in the judicial verdicts. And honestly, they deserve more than this verdict. We are suffering today from the one-year rule they led.
With the July 20th deadline for a comprehensive agreement over Iran's nuclear energy program fast approaching, Tehran has announced a new round of negotiations with US and EU officials. The trilateral meetings scheduled for Monday are aimed at laying the groundwork for the upcoming talks between the P5+1 group of countries and Iran.
Racing to meet the July 20th deadline, Iran and major world powers are stepping up efforts to hammer out the details of a comprehensive agreement over Tehran's nuclear energy program. For its part, Iran's foreign minister announced 2 days of trilateral talks with US and the EU officials slated for Monday. Those meetings are set to be followed by an additional 2 days of talks with a Russian delegation in the Italian capital. The Americans have welcomed the announcement of further discussions. Officials in Washington said that the direct talks between Iran and the United States will be a timely opportunity to try to advance the nuclear deal. A U.S. administration official was quoted as saying that the consultations come at an important juncture of the negotiations. The unprecedented set of direct trilateral talks come ahead of Iran's next round of negotiations with the P5+1 group in Vienna, slated for June 16th to the 20th. Saturday's announcement also revealed that Tehran was working to arrange separate bilateral discussions with members of the P5+1 before the Vienna meeting. Several rounds of talks have already been held in Vienna, but the latest in mid-May ended with no apparent progress. Meanwhile, Iran has urged Western powers to resist pressure from third parties not directly involved in negotiations over its nuclear activities, in a clear reference to the Zionist regime. For now, officials will be hoping to reach a final consensus over an interim agreement reached in November of 2013, which limited Iran's atomic activities in exchange for a partial lifting of sanctions.
Well, Sunday marked another day of carnage in Iraq. At least 20 people have been killed in nationwide militant attacks, the deadliest of which targeted the Patriotic Union of the Kurdistan Party in Baquba.
A wave of bombings across Iraq has left dozens killed and wounded in attacks that bear all the hallmarks of militants belonging to the Al-Qaeda offshoot of the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant. The deadliest of the attacks targeted the city of Baquba, northeast of the capital Baghdad, when a car bomb detonated near the headquarters of President Jalal Talabani's Patriotic Union of Kurdistan Party in a Kurdish security forces building in the town of Zalaula. As emergency workers arrived at the scene, a suicide bomber blew himself up, killing at least 20 people and wounding 67 others. Meanwhile, in the northern city of Mosul, where security forces have been battling militants in recent days, mortar fire hit 3 western areas, killing 8 people and wounding 3. Also in Sargaran, northwest of the city of Kirkuk, 3 roadside bombs killed a civilian and wounded 3 soldiers. Sunday's violence followed a series of major operations by militants in recent days that have killed dozens of people. A series of bomb blasts Saturday night rocked the Iraqi capital and left at least 60 dead. This as militants belonging to the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant took hundreds of hostages at the Anbar University in Ramadi, west of Baghdad, the last of whom were only freed in an offensive by security forces that sparked hours of fighting. Iraq is suffering its worst violence in years, and with none of the numerous problems that contribute to the heightened unrest headed for quick resolutions, the bloodshed is likely to continue unabated.
Hundreds of Palestinians have staged rallies in the West Bank city of Ramallah in support of hunger strikers as their peaceful form of protests entered its 45th day. This as the detainees' lawyers revealed that Israeli occupation forces are treating the hunger strikers with brutality.
Palestinians in the West Bank are expressing solidarity with hunger-striking detainees encaged in the walls of Israeli prisons. From reenacting the dilemma to closing shops in a commercial strike. Hundreds of Palestinians also rallied across the West Bank, including the city of Ramallah, to protest against the groundless Israeli detention of Palestinians. Ayman Btesh may be absent from his home, but his pictures give solace to his mother, who worries about his health but understands his cause.
I'm very afraid about my son because the situation is very difficult. They say his eyesight is weak and he may not be able to see well again. He also may not be able to walk and might have to use a wheelchair. They did not go on strike because they want to die. They are on strike because they want their freedom. My son is on strike because they put him under administrative detention without any reason.
The lawyers of the 300 Palestinian detainees who went on hunger strike on April 24th to protest against the Israeli arbitrary imprisonment policy, known as administrative detention, have said that Israeli authorities are brutally torturing hunger strikers to pressure them into ending their strike.
I think that there is a big responsibility on the countries which are members of the 4 Geneva Conventions. Palestine is now a full member in these agreements. The 4th and 3rd agreements are about the rights of prisoners, which are always violated by Israel.
The Israeli entity has come under attack over its human rights abuses and breach of international law. However, as opposed to verbal condemnation, little concrete action has been taken to defend the rights of Palestinian detainees in Israeli prisons.
Meanwhile, the Israeli cabinet has approved changes in a law that could undermine any future peace talks with the Palestinians. The bill would allow Israeli courts to block the pardon of Palestinian detainees allegedly held for murder. However, the law, which could complicate prisoner swaps between the Israeli entity and the Palestinian Authority, has yet to be approved by the Knesset. Well, the newly formed consensus government between Fatah and Hamas, following a historic reconciliation agreement, is assuming power across the Gaza Strip. Both the Ministries of Labour and Women's Affairs have been handed over to their new respective ministers.
I am honored and pleased to join the government for the greater interest of our country, for the interests of laborers and workers. We need around 300,000 work opportunities, which will not be provided unless the crossings are reopened, the lifting of the unjust siege, and the establishment of free trade between Gaza and the West Bank.
God willing, all the divisions will remain part of the past as we flip a new page that is centered around the Palestinian people's interests.
Meanwhile, Pope Francis is hosting a peace prayer meeting with Israeli President Shimon Peres and President of the Palestinian Authority Mahmoud Abbas in the Vatican. An initiative to bring the two was proposed by the pontiff during the recent visit to the occupied territories, even though it is not expected to have any immediate effect on the lingering standoff between Palestinians and Israelis. Vatican sources said Sunday's prayers will focus on forgiveness and peace. The Syrian government condemned the European Union's criticism of its presidential election, calling it a violation of national sovereignty. The EU described Tuesday's poll, which saw President Bashar al-Assad secure nearly 90% of the vote, as illegitimate. Damascus said the comments amounted to a, quote, flagrant violation of international law, which stipulates respect the sovereignty of states and non-interference in their affairs. Defending President Barack Obama's foreign policy as one of global leadership, National Security Advisor Susan Rice said on Friday that the United States was taking important steps in Syria by offering both lethal and non-lethal aid to the so-called moderate opposition fighting the Syrian government.
That's why the United States has ramped up its support for the moderate vetted opposition, providing lethal and non-lethal support where we can to support both the civilian opposition and the military opposition.
The US has pledged an additional $48 million to strengthen Ukraine's state border guard service and enhance what the White House called national unity in the former Soviet state. This as bloody clashes between troops loyal to Kiev and pro-Russian activists continued in eastern Ukraine.
In a White House statement released on its website, the US has vowed to provide an additional $48 million to Kiev's government. The assistance, which requires approval by the US Congress, is aimed at helping the Ukrainian government conduct key reforms, build law enforcement capacity, and strengthen national unity. The statement added that the funds should also help the Ukrainian government strengthen the country's state border guard services. The statement follows an earlier announcement by US President Barack Obama to offer Kiev $5 million in non-lethal military aid. The new pledge of assistance from Washington to Kiev comes on the heels of a meeting between Obama and his Ukrainian counterpart earlier in the week, when the American president offered to prop up Ukraine's security forces. But it may be a while before the Western military assistance translates into results on the ground. Pro-Russian activists in eastern Ukraine are still holding their ground against the brutal onslaught by troops loyal to Kiev. In their latest operation, separatists targeted the Loyansk International Airport. According to Kiev, the assault, which took place Saturday evening and Sunday morning in the immediate wake of the inauguration of Ukraine's new president Petro Poroshenko, did not result in any injuries among the defenders. This comes as the Ukrainian army resumed operations in the neighboring region of Donetsk, targeting residential properties and leaving several casualties in the city of Slavyansk. Self-defense sources in Semyonovivka village said that Ukrainian troops launched Grad rockets from a neighboring town. The shelling caused a major fire at a factory, while other public facilities were also destroyed. As for the residents here, few are likely to welcome more American aid for Kiev's military machine, with the money unlikely to go into building national unity, but rather suppressing any voices of dissent.
You're watching Ali Tijah World News, still to come. Thousands of protesters staged rallies across Bahrain against the country's monarchy. Welcome back to Ali Tijah World News. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Egypt's former army chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi promises economic growth and political stability following his inauguration as the country's president. At least 30 have been killed and dozens more wounded in the latest round of militant attacks across Iraq. And residents in the occupied West Bank staged rallies in solidarity with hunger-striking Palestinians encaged in Israeli prisons. Thousands of Bahrainis have rallied across the country to denounce an ongoing crackdown by Saudi-backed security forces against pro-democracy activists in the kingdom. Protesters marched in the villages of Sitra, Diraz and Ma'amir. Bahrainis chanted slogans against the ruling monarchy and lifted banners calling for democratic reforms. The latest demonstrations coincided with new reports released by the opposition Al-Wifaq party, revealing that the regime's security forces have detained over 7,000 people since last year, including 200 children. Earlier, we spoke to resigned Bahraini MP Jalal Fayrouz, and I started by asking him if Manama's crackdown would undermine the protesters' ability to hold rallies.
This has made the people more having thrust for going into more demonstrations and trying to show the world that the people of Bahrain are facing these atrocities by the dictatorship in Bahrain. The people are today more stronger than 3 years ago, and actually the only Arab Spring which is still lasting is Bahrain, with the people being in the street in tens of thousands, and with the, of course, as a ratio of the population, that makes it extraordinary around the world. Actually, whatever government anywhere else would have faced this type of demonstration would have resigned. But the Bahrain is being governed by a single family who's taking over all the wealth and all the positions, and discriminating very fiercely against the Shias and against, of course, the opposition. We have seen in the last demonstration, children, women, the elder people not fearing the crackdown, not fearing the fire bullets and the bird shots which were fired at them, and they are very persistent that they will continue until they gain whatever they have revolted for.
More than 360 Iranian and foreign companies attended the opening ceremony of the 8th International Exhibition on Exchange, Banking and Insurance in the Iranian capital, Tehran. Our correspondent Hussein Dabash has been covering the event.
The Islamic Republic's biggest annual international financial fair kicked off in the Iranian capital, Tehran. Hundreds of officials, including Iranian and foreign businessmen, attended the opening ceremony of the 8th International Exhibition on Exchange, Banking and Insurance.
This invite customs of customs, taxation, banking and stock must be connected to each other. One of the main factors that are preventing corruption in this country is that all economic sectors in the country are connected with one another. In the near future, Iran is set to create over 1.5 million jobs, with investments being implemented by the government.
Economic sanctions imposed on Iran by the US and the European Union over Tehran's nuclear energy program were specifically designed to target the country's banking sector. However, as talks between the Islamic Republic and the P5+1 group of countries make headway, Iran's banking sector appears to be reaping the benefits.
The sanctions that were imposed on Iran, specifically those by the US and Europe, which mainly target our banking sector, are easing, as was agreed upon in the joint plan of action signed by Iran and the P5+1 group of countries last year. Iran is now on the verge of receiving its 6th payment of frozen funds. 5 installments have been received so far, and it will be announced as soon as the new payment transfers. The economy is doing well. The inflation rate is decreasing and is no longer increasing. Any funds the central bank receives from its frozen account abroad will be properly allocated into the economy.
Despite the economic challenges faced by Iran, the country continues to be one of the leading economic and political capitals in the region. More than 360 Iranian and foreign companies are participating in this year's exhibition. Firms from Europe, Asia, and the Middle East are among those showcasing their financial services. The financial services showcased here today can certainly be compared with those present in the financial world, despite Tehran being under sanctions for over 3 decades now. Tehran's attractive foreign investment market has certainly attracted investors from across the world, including the West. Reporting for Al Ittijah TV, Hussein Dabash, Tehran.
FIFA is facing fresh pressure after one of the main sponsors of the upcoming World Cup called for an investigation into recent allegations that Qatar bribed officials to secure the 2022 tournament. A statement released by Sony said that as a FIFA partner, the company expects football's governing body to adhere to its principles of integrity, ethics and fair play. Meanwhile, a US prosecutor announced that a report relating to an internal investigation will be issued in July, shortly after this year's World Cup wraps up in Brazil. Voters in Kosovo have begun casting their ballots in parliamentary elections, which are seen as a crucial test for the government's EU bid. Prime Minister Hashim Thaçi's Democratic Party of Kosovo is expected to face a strong challenge from the opposition Democratic League. Kosovo's Serb minority has been encouraged to take part in the polls for the first time since breaking away from Serbia in 2008.
I am fully confident that Kosovo, its citizens and political spectrum will deliver the best message to the world, that in Kosovo the democracy is evolving. Our state is a new European country with huge developing opportunities that we will be using in the interest of the people.
A new survey published by Spain's El Pas newspaper has revealed that 62% of Spaniards want to see a referendum over the future of the country's monarchy. The poll comes less than a week after King Juan Carlos abdicated in favour of his son.
Spain's centuries-old monarchy is facing a challenge that threatens its very existence. Calls for the abolishment of the monarchy have been growing louder in recent years, but last week's abdication of King Juan Carlos has fueled demands for a referendum. A survey published by a local newspaper has revealed that over two-thirds of the Spanish public are in favor of holding a referendum to decide whether the country should continue to be ruled by monarchs or adopt a republican system. The revelations come as anti-royal sentiment reached the heart of the capital. On Saturday, 3 color flags were brandished, reviving memories of a rebellion that brought Republicans to power more than 80 years ago.
We demand a republic instead of a monarchy. We want to be citizens, not subjects. In a republic, we can demand accountability to the president. We don't want to be ruled by a corrupt family. A republic is cheaper as well.
Making the most of the king's abdication, I think this is the best time to demand what we deserve as citizens, and that is the right to decide our head of state.
But these ambitions look far-fetched, at least for now. Crown Prince Felipe is due to be coronated later this month. He is expected to meet no objection in an overwhelmingly loyal parliament, where both the ruling People's Party and the opposition Socialists still stand firm behind the monarchy, which they claim will put Spain on the road to a better future.
Family members of the passengers on board Malaysian Airlines flight MH370 have launched a campaign to raise £3 million. The money is being offered as a reward to any whistleblower that reveals information about the missing jetliner.
Been cut off so many times at the gate that we're just now having to take things into our own hands, think outside the box and just try and do something to find this plane. We just think someone knows something. You know, there's been so much contradicting information coming from the investigation.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi has arrived in India's New Delhi as a two-day state visit that will include a landmark meeting with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Beijing said that the aim of the visit was to establish contact with the new government of India, adding that the Chinese delegation will be prepared to engage in fruitful talks. Modi has previously hinted that India would work to bridge its trade deficit by seeking greater access to the Chinese market. At least 30 people, including women and children, have been killed in overnight inter-ethnic violence in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Local sources said the victims were slaughtered while they slept in a church. Authorities said that the methods of the attacks varied between shootings and stabbings. However, it remains unclear which group was behind the assault. Sudan's youth are using the online social networking service Twitter to help people attain one of the country's most vital food staples, flour. Our Khartoum correspondent Ahmed Saeed Ahmed tells us more now about the campaign dubbed 1 kilogram of flour.
Social media networks have opened up a range of possibilities for young people in Sudan. These youths met on Twitter and became friends before launching a campaign dubbed 1 kilogram of flour.
We decided to make this thing or campaign Kilo de Gig, which means 1 kilogram of flour. 1 kilogram of flour can help many people in Sudan because flour is essential.
Flour is indeed essential. It is almost the sole most common ingredient of any meal in the country. It can be used in a variety of recipes and prepared in a multitude of fashions, giving families an array of dish options. The initiative works in a simple yet very effective way.
So basically we meet at open square in downtown Khartoum. It's called Atenay. Okay? Volunteers come there from 5 p.m. till 8 p.m. We receive donation of flour, and we know that some people can't come to us. So we activated the phone number. You can find it on our Facebook page or Twitter accounts.
The volunteers receive these donations and then they proceed to the next stage, distributing flour to different families which they have already identified through meticulous statistics and cooperation with government and popular bodies. The initiative, however, urged these youths to explore more possibilities.
This initiative has made us see another side of Sudan, and this is just the beginning. Kilo de Gig makes us more enthusiastic about more initiatives that could take place in the future and help the people of Sudan. We are looking to solve part of the problem around us. We feel like so far our initiative will succeed in sustaining hundreds of families.
The initiative is a new one, but it had made quite an impression on many. A filmmaker touring through Khartoum was a witness to the effort and the purpose that effort serves.
I'm very impressed. I think I haven't seen anything like that in Khartoum before. And the fact that young people living in central Khartoum do care about the population who is in the outskirts. I don't know if you can call these suburbs IDPs anymore, or I don't know how they call these places, but I visited these places and definitely a lot of people need that kind of food.
Be it a kilogram of flour or a drop of water, said one beneficiary, charity and human fraternity are what counts, and they are never measured in quantity.
1 kilogram of flour may not be a big donation, but put together, these donations amount to much and can make a difference, with the latter being the very goal these youth are after. Ahmed Saeed Ahmed, Al-Tijah News Channel, Khartoum.
Now let's take a look at some lighter stories making news around the world.
As the world marked World Environment Day earlier this week, the renowned environmentalist Dr. Jane Goodall traveled to Queensland, Australia, the site of a recent rescue of a koala jack which was hit by a car. The koala was successfully operated on and is being rehabilitated at the local hospital before being released back into the wild. Staying with animal life in Australia, where police said that human remains were found inside a crocodile after a 62-year-old man went missing in the country's Kakadu National Park. A small leather company based in a quiet neighborhood of the Ghanaian capital is winning fame with its custom leather shoes. A group of craftsmen working out of a garage dubbed their shop Heal the World. Though the Chinese national soccer team won't be attending the upcoming FIFA World Cup in Brazil, football-related products like national flags, jerseys, and novelty-themed products from China have already been shipped to the host country. under grey skies, but with hundreds cheering Vive la Riani, Britain's Queen Elizabeth II had Paris's best-known flower market named after her, capping a successful 3-day visit to France.
All right, here's a reminder of tonight's top stories. Egypt's former army chief Abdel Fattah al-Sisi promises economic growth and political stability following his inauguration as the country's president. At least 30 people have been killed and dozens more wounded in the latest round of militant attacks across Iraq. And residents in the occupied West Bank staged rallies in solidarity with hunger-striking Palestinians encaged in Israeli prisons. Well, that's all from me and the Al Hijah News team. Thank you very much for watching and good night.